The following is an example of simple diffusion. 20% chance of getting it right again. Any questions about that? I mean, any doubts, or are you pretty confident of that answer? Yeah? Glucose can move by facilitated transport, can't it? Usually hooked to another protein. Sodium out of the cell, sodium calcium exchange, yeah? And also, arguably, the sodium potassium ATPase. Sodium comes in, it's got to get out, so none of the oxygen, yeah. Uptake of calcium by the SR, it's a pump, isn't it? It's amazing. And binding carbon dioxide to hemoglobin, that's a whole different process, a chemical reaction essentially. Okay, so I think by a process of elimination, that's quite an important answering strategy, a process of elimination. So if you don't really know the answer, you can eliminate those that you know come to the right answer by that process. Isometric, really the only thing you need to know here is iso means same, metric, something to do with a meter or ruler or same length. There's only one that fulfills that criteria, muscle length. It's nothing to do with rates, it's nothing to do with force space, muscle length. Any doubts in that? Are you happy? Ions are transported against their concentration gradient by
active transport.
Is there any other possible answers? I don't think so. Ions are against their concentration gradient by active transport. Yeah? Depolarized phase of the action potential in nerve fibers is sodium, isn't it? Conductance just simply means how much of something is moving across a membrane. Conductance. So a high conductance would mean more, and a low conductance would mean less sodium moving in this case. Conductance. Depolarizing, most of these questions, they're not in any way designed to trick or anything like that, like putting similar answers. And I think that in general at this stage, in the first year, they tend to be, when you choose an answer, there's a correct and there's 4 incorrect. You know what I mean? Later on, in years 3 and 4, you may get a different style of question. It may give you 5 correct answers, for instance. But you would have to choose the most appropriate. So it could be a treatment with a drug. Yeah? But in the question, it may say, for example, that patient is allergic to so-and-so. Do you know what I mean? So all the drug treatments may be okay for that illness, but by reading carefully, you can actually eliminate some of the treatments and come to the best solution. Do you see what I mean? So, and that's kind of a bit more tricky, if you like, isn't it? But in general, at this stage, at least in physiology, you tend to get 4 or 5 answers, and there's only one correct one usually. I mean, there is one correct answer, and the rest are incorrect. Yeah. And most of them are knowledge-based as well. Knowledge-based at this level. Secondary active transport is driven by energy of the concentration gradient created by primary active transport. So a good example of that is the sodium-potassium pump. Yeah? Maintaining the balance of sodium and potassium in the cell. And secondary active transport in that could be something like sodium calcium exchange. It's using that gradient set up by the ATP pump to power another system, if you like, the sodium calcium exchange. So also look at this question. If I knew no physiology at all, which question would I choose? I would choose B, because it's the longest one.
True.
Huh? I mean, if you were a student of literature or history and you were answering this question, intuitively I would go for the one with the longest. And you'd be right, of course. Huh? So I deliberately put that one there with a nice long, just to illustrate that point. What have we got? Easy one, I could sense very easy because almost as soon as I put the question there, there's chattering going on. But look here at the question. It may have said anions. You know what anions? Anions are different from cations, aren't they? And you could say positively charged cations or negative. You know, you could fiddle around. So don't just look at intracellular fluid and go down the list. Read the question. Make sure you know it's anions, cations, whatever it is. You see what I mean? It's an easy question, but it's also an easy one to just make a bit of a mistake and then kick yourself afterwards. Potassium, of course, yeah. Intracellular. 8. All the questions are, all the answers are similar length, so you can't use that as a criteria. Transmission of signals across a chemical synapse is unidirectional, one way, because. Any doubts about that? Yeah. Yeah. Number 9, you made a good point about this one.
I get this one.
Yeah? What was your point?
I guess.
The point was raised because the A and B are similar speed, if you like, similar fastest. Yeah? Okay? We could have put which is the slowest here, by the way, which would be the. Oh, okay, yeah. Have you heard of C fibers or not? Okay. So how would we deal with that? What we would do, when you answered this question, if it was a real life exam, some of you would probably choose A and some would be choosing B, and they may be both correct, you see. But what we would do is we would identify that in the statistics of the exam. Maybe 50% of the class chose A and the other 50 chose B. And then we would go back to that question and we would say, oops, sure enough, there are 2 correct answers, so we give credit for both, so you wouldn't in any way lose out. You see what I mean? And accidents happen. Maybe I put this deliberately so you would raise that question. Yeah? It's possible you can make a mistake, isn't it? 2 answers could be correct. But it's all taken care of in the stats, yeah. Pardon? Say again? A question about 8. Why, hang on, somebody asked about that. D. No. Because if I've got a nerve, here it is, a nerve, yeah, and I stimulate it in the middle, action potentials can travel both ways, can't they? It's like a piece of wire. If I get a piece of wire, I can put electricity this way and it'll go to the light at this end, or it'll go the other way, either direction. Yeah? So a piece of nerve, you can travel both ways. But when that nerve is connected into a system, and another nerve, that's when the unidirectionalness happens, if you like. Yeah? You see why that one is wrong? Yeah? Okay. Sodium-calcium exchange is an example of, secondary active transport. It's not filtration, is it? Not primary active. Passive osmosis. By process of elimination you can get to the right answer. Number 11, doing well. So of course you need to know what the phases of the action potential are, don't you? Remember the phases? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, yeah? So, calcium, so if you didn't know the phases, then of course you've got a 20% chance of getting it right, I think. But if you did know the phases, I think you would go for B, L-type calcium carbonate. Yeah? Okay. A little bit wordy, this one. Roughly the same number of words in each answer, so you can't use numbers of words to hazard a guess. But I hope with all our chattering about excitation, contraction, coupling, and calcium-induced calcium release and all this sort of stuff, you'll get the right answer, which is B. Yeah? Okay. 13. Phase 0 of the sinoatrial node. Actually, again, you need to know the phases, and of course, in the sinoatrial node, you haven't got 5 phases, have you? You've only got 3. But again, the answer is L-type calcium current. But it's the upstroke this time, not the plateau. Okay, so 13 is B. Little bit of a calculation. I saw people rustling around, pulling out calculators, thinking, my goodness. So here you just simply need to subtract one from the other, don't you? End diastolic, systolic, end systolic. Difference is 60 mils, isn't it? 6 times 6 is 36. Do we have a 36 in the answer? 3.6. Primary pacemaker, 25% chance of getting this right, just by guessing. It's a sinoatrial node, yeah? It's difficult to imagine, well, you could have had an E, we could have put an E, if we wanted to make 5 possible answers. But, you know, that E would be a distractor that would be very obviously wrong, I think, because, you know, what would you put there? Ventricle or something? 16. The QRS, ventricular depolarization. Yeah. Again, it's very difficult to imagine a 5th option, isn't it? What would you put as a distractor there? You can't, it's difficult to come up with another sensible distractor, if you like. $16, 17. You've got to know a little bit about valves here. Ventricular ejection. I guess you can get to this by a process of elimination. During ventricular ejection, blood is coming out of the ventricle, isn't it? So if you think about the left side of the heart, then we've got the aortic valve involved in that story, haven't we? And we've got the atrioventricular valves, which have another name as well, don't they? They're called mitral bicuspid, exactly. So by going through that process, you'll probably get to the right answer, D. Papillary muscles. Okay. I guess you've got to know where they are anatomically. Quite wordy, lots of words in that. It takes a little while to read. But B is the right answer. B and D are very similar, and I heard people muttering about the possibility of B or D, but they homed in on B because there's a slight difference, isn't there? One talks about atrial, one talks about ventricle. Number 19, a bit more difficult because the answer is D. Somebody actually showed me this diagram before the start of this class with a question. But this is where the arterioles are, isn't it? And this is where the biggest pressure drop is. Yeah? So remember that. So important. The arterioles regulate the blood flow through capillaries, does it? If you didn't have the arterioles there, you would be bursting or rupturing all your capillaries. The pressure would be too high. But the other thing about these arterioles, because they're controlled by the sympathetics, yeah, they have sympathetic innervation, and it means that you can regulate the flow through different organ systems, if you like. And I think the example we use is when we run, we need blood flow to the muscles of the legs, don't we? So there the arterioles will be dilating, allowing more blood flow through the muscles. Whilst at the same time in the gut, they'll be constricting blood flow, won't they? Because when you run, you're generally not eating. The other way around is true as well. When we eat, we need blood flow to the gut, don't we? We don't really need blood flow to the muscles of the legs when we're eating normally. So you can see that the arterioles play a very important role in regulating blood flow through different organ systems, if you like, according to the needs of the body. Remember, we only have 5 litres of blood. We want to optimise the use of that 5 litres of blood. So when we're running, we need a good amount of blood in the muscles. When we're eating, we need a good amount of blood. When we get hot and bothered and start to sweat, we move more blood to the surface. Our skin turns a reddish colour. That's because you've got vasodilation. And of course the environment will cool that blood, so that when the blood goes back to the core, the centre, it'll have a cooling effect. Do you see the idea? When we get very cold, the skin turns a bluish or white or pale colour, because you get vasoconstriction at the surface, because you don't want that blood to go back to the core and cool it more, do you? So you actually restrict the blood flow, so you can see hot and cold environments, the effect on the physiology of the body. Arterioles is very important. Yeah. Last. By the way, your exam next week has 30 questions, yeah? 30 MCQs. This is just 20. Okay. Which phase of the cardiac cycle represents iso, volumetric contraction? So there are only 2 important words there. Iso, volumetric.